society, and for the last 4 years, he's been working at the Dutch Ministry of the Interior. His role there has been coordinating activities of Web 2.0 in relation to democratic processes and service delivery by the government. He will be talking about what the ministry does to promote e-participation and what the problems are of mistrust between government and citizens in their activities. How can they work together better? Do governments and citizens participate in each other's activities, or do they work like in different silos? And if so, why, and what can be done about it? We have some technical glitches occurring up here, but I'm hoping that Arnout will be able to wing it until his slides are functional. Can everyone please give a warm welcome to Arnout?
Okay, thank you. The organization, thank you for offering me some time to talk a little bit about what our Ministry of the Interior does in the field of e-participation and Web 2.0. I'm waiting for the technical assistance from our PowerPoint presentation, but in the meanwhile I will just start. Maybe there is someone with a laptop who is able to present a PowerPoint presentation that I could use, but I think I will just continue and you will continue as well. Okay, I'm Arnout Ponsioen. I'm working from the Ministry of the Interior in the Netherlands, and I'm working specifically in the field of e-participation. Our directorate is focusing on building the electronic government, and e-participation is just one small part of that issue. I want to give a presentation in the first part just to show some activities that we do as the ministry and continue a little bit of my observations in this field and what the problems are and the next challenges are for the next few years. I think if you focus on e-participation, then you're talking quite a bit about citizen participation in relation to the power of ICTs in that field. In the Netherlands, about in the 1970s, a lot of energy was focusing on consultations. That means consultations afterwards. Government defined a kind of policy program and asked citizens what they think of it and have their say. In the 1980s, that was succeeded by interactive policy making, and that was quite a new phase because much more earlier in the process and much more parties were involved in defining the policy plans and policy programs, not only afterwards but also in between and in a very early phase. In the early years of 2000, that a third phase started, which was much more focusing on citizens' initiatives and how governments are able to participate in initiatives of citizens. So a kind of reverse participation in which the lead is being laid by citizens instead of the government. Also, what happened in those years was a very big shift of electronic participation initiatives by citizens and also by government. So the virtualization of citizen participation was taking place in that phase. At our ministry, we started early 2000s with a lot of different ministers. The first one was our Minister van Bokstel, who was focusing very much on promoting e-skills. E-skills needed for people to participate in society. He was succeeded by another minister, Minister Pechtold. He was much more focusing on the democratic perspective in this field of electronic developments. So he was focusing on electronic referenda, on people voting. Thank you. So we have only half of it, can you a little bit broaden it? Oh. He was much more focusing on the democratic perspective in the field of e-participation. From the last years, our new Minister Bijleveld, State Secretary actually, she was much more focusing on promoting citizen participation in making government services better, and also finding solutions for social issues. So you have three different perspectives on internet developments within our ministry. What we did with the State Secretary Bijleveld was in the field of e-participation to start with networking with all people active in that field, a kind of bottom-up approach, not defining great plans or schemes for other local governments how to do e-participation, but just attract a lot of energy and thinking power pre-existing in society. Thank you very much. These are the sheets I already did. The mid-2000s, finding solutions. Yeah, what we did was building networks of people, of organizations already active in this field of e-participation, just to get input for our ministry for things that we should do, to get a kind of plan of e-participation. We organized a great e-participation summit in 2007. We developed an e-participation interactive platform for organizations to present their initiatives, but also to have critical feedback on their initiatives. And we started some experiments. I want to show you some experiments that we did. Watstemtmijnraad.nl, that's the site, is a kind of Dutch version of They Work For You that you have in the UK. On this site you can search for voting behavior of local representatives. We started with 4 local governments, and the plan is now this year for about 25 and next year about 100 local governments to present their voting behavior in this way. We also promoted petitions site, already pre-existing as a private initiative. We helped them build the next version of it, and we also, what we did is, in this version, local governments can have an e-petition counter in which they can accept petitions that come especially for their local area, and do the whole process very transparent. So give feedback on what they do with the petition and when and who. A third one is a digital community policeman application. We work together with buurtlink.nl on the left top side. In this site, a local policeman can present himself online and ask people to help them to come up with issues that are to be taken up in the neighborhood. But also he can invite people to find, for example, a burglary for who has seen anything, etc. So he's presenting himself online. The fourth one is a kind of a consultation, but then presented on a Google map. That was for the organization who was organizing it, something that they didn't think of at all. So they were very used to organize physical meetings, and now they decided to do it online, and to their surprise, in 1 month they received about 5,000 visitors or hits of the website, and more than 100 ideas and suggestions for that process. And that was a lot more than they usually get out of physical meetings. So they were positive about this instrument. The late 2000s, we did 7 new experiments. This time not experiments initiated by governments, but we fully gave money to the Digital Pioneers program. That's an incentive program for innovative ideas, and you can get some money, about 15,000–20,000 euros, to realize your concept, your innovative concept. So to us it was not known before we started what kind of ideas that would come out of it. But there were a lot of qualitative initiatives with good quality. I have some URL for you if you want to look a little bit further. Digitalepioniers.nl, and you have to search for e-participation. Then you will find more information on these issues. Further, we also started to promote realizing existing energy at local governments. There are a lot of people, but mostly just one person at the local municipality as a civil servant who wants to do things with e-participation or Web 2.0, but has a lot of struggle to find money, to find space and energy to do it. So we help them with a kind of brigade to help them make their ideas much more concrete and realize it. We have an e-participation award in the Netherlands, and we upscale and further develop some of the experiments, especially Wat stemt mijn raad en petitions, via a special program that's called Citizen Link. And last, we have some other ideas I want to skip because of the time, but there are a lot of contests, open data contests, and an Overheid 2.0 platform, especially for local governments to have a space that they can trust technically to start Web 2.0 initiatives at local governments. That's so far the activities that we do from our ministry. I want to continue with some more personal observations that I have as a policy officer at the Dutch ministry, but also as a researcher for a few years at a big organization in the Netherlands on this topic. And in my view, if I look at e-participation developments in the Netherlands, then I see that citizens' willingness for e-participation is very high. You see it in several research results that it's really the preferred channel for interaction with the government, and that's still growing, that number. On the same time, e-participation modules on government websites is decreasing almost 50% each year. In 2006 and 2007, that is really decreasing. E-participation in most cases is far from being business as usual. It's quite exotic, quite new, almost always in the form of an experiment, nothing very structural, embedded in the organization of local governments. And last, e-participation is dependent, I just said it before, on just one enthusiastic, mostly lower level civil servant. So that's not a very nice basic situation to grow. Other things that I find important to say here is that in most cases safety issue is very popular. A lot of initiatives from police organizations who are using the internet to get information, to attract people, using their eyes and ears in the streets, their YouTube movies with their mobile phones that they can use for their work as policemen. Also, the local level, the neighborhood level, is a popular issue to think of e-participation initiatives. Especially local governments are focusing on that challenge to promote social cohesion in neighborhoods. Also, and that's much more on the national level, there's also a lot of energy going to high abstraction level or complex forms like participative consultations in terms of laws or regulations. Also, what I find interesting is that most governments only focus on the very lower levels of the participation, like giving information and doing consultations. So the higher levels like interactive co-producing techniques or even self-regulation of citizens is hardly being done and being stimulated within local governments. Also, what I find interesting is that most initiatives are focusing on the very advanced applications. They neglect the existing applications that people are used to. They also want to focus on the new developments, and that might be explainable because most of the initiatives are started from people who are working at the information or automation departments and not by citizens who are responsible for policy development. So it's a kind of technical aspiration to do it very advanced, and you can question if that is really a good thing to do, because a lot of citizens do not have the required e-skills for such advanced applications like wikis or YouTube movies or whatever. Last two things: passive participation, that is quite popular and still growing. If you look at those initiatives, then you see that the more passive the participation can be, the more people are interested in participating. The more structural and the more time-consuming participation forms like discussions and giving their views and consultations is something people don't have time for, but they do have time to get an SMS or a Twitter tweet if a burglar is active in their neighborhood, for example. The last one I want to mention is, if you discuss with local governments, then they always talk about the problem that they perceive as a problem of representativeness. If they do e-participation, then they say, yes, that's nice to do, but we neglect or we disable a lot of people if we do it digitally. People who cannot read, people who don't have access to internet, etc. Representativeness is a kind of policy reflex that everything that they do and they define as a policy has to be representative in society. Well, I think in Web 2.0 developments, it's not so much about representativeness, but much more about new ideas, focusing on new energy and starting new initiatives. And that's something very different than they used to do before. So in my view, e-participation's reality at this moment, in the Netherlands at least, I see a lot of energy on both sides. Many governments are doing e-participation initiatives, but there are even more initiatives in society that are also focusing on all kinds of social issues and finding solutions for social issues. But they do it in their own social networks and are hardly present on or interested in participating in initiatives of, for example, governments. So we have two separate narcissistic, almost narcissistic closed worlds. They look at their own world, their own initiatives. There is a lot of bonding between people, but there's hardly any bridging. If you want to analyze it a little bit more sociological, there's no bridging between initiatives, between groups. It's almost always the bonding thing between like-minded persons, like-minded citizens, like-minded governments. So interaction between citizens and governments is hardly present. Governments organize consultations, but they are closed. There's no interaction between policy officers and between citizens, only between citizens. And if you look at initiatives of citizens, you always see that it attracts a lot of people who are thinking in a more or less same way as the others. There's a lot of cohesion in those fields. No reciprocity. There's no dynamic co-creative dialogues that I would like to see, because I think that's the main challenge that we have. So why is that?